Welcome back to What's Now. Continuing our focus on business right now, we are going to talk about small business owners. They have grit and determination, and over this pandemic have had to pivot hard. Well, I recently spoke with the host of the podcast, Journey to Launch. She has some great suggestions and insight all about this. Let's take a look.
Grit and resilience are two words that immediately come to mind when describing America's small business owners. They've had to pivot hard during the pandemic to keep their doors open. Meanwhile, lots of us are now taking the leap to finally be our own bosses and start new ventures. The good news is there are resources to help both groups. Jamila Souffrant ditched a cubicle life a few years ago and now hosts the Journey to Launch podcast with over 2 million downloads. She's joining us today to share tips on where to look for help. Jamila, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Many of us experienced a hardship like no other during the pandemic, but for some, that hardship led to a new beginning. Tell me more about that.
You're right. This health crisis disrupted everyone and every business, but I also think it's ushered in a new wave of entrepreneurship and people who are wanting to start their own businesses, and we're going to see a lot more of that to come.
You stepped out on your own before the pandemic. What advice do you have for current and would-be entrepreneurs whose dreams may have stalled, and how can you overcome that?
Entrepreneurship can be a very lonely and scary endeavor, so you should not do this alone. When I first stepped out into entrepreneurship, and even now today, I made sure to seek out resources that could help me grow and a community that could help support me of like-minded business owners. So I always give the advice to entrepreneurs that you need to create and keep a network around you so that way you can learn together and get through the tough times together also.
Funding, coaching, and technical support can seem like huge hurdles for small businesses. So where should we start if we need these services?
You know, business owners can't do it alone, and you don't have to. The private sector has really stepped up to provide more resources more now than ever before. One example is Wells Fargo Open for Business Fund, which is expected to generate $1 billion in financing and 7.5 million hours of technical assistance for entrepreneurs to help them grow. The fund works with nonprofits to offer experts in marketing, accounting, business planning, and more, all things small business owners need to move from surviving to thriving.
What are the biggest challenges you're hearing from minority business owners and women entrepreneurs?
Diverse-owned businesses tend to be quite small, so they don't always have the personal savings, family, and friends that can help fund the business. And they don't have the connections necessarily to raise outside funding. So the resources provided and the systems don't always take into account those nuances. So it's really important to tap into and seek these avenues of resources and capital and expertise to help grow as a business owner.
And where can we go to learn more?
You can learn more by going to wellsfargo.com/together.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jamila Souffrant, for joining us today with this important information about businesses and helping right now after the pandemic.
Thank you for having me.